We're going to call the regular City of Prescott Council meeting to order. It's Monday, October 10th, 2022 at 6 o'clock. We'll do roll call. Bailey?
Here.
Maureen?
Here.
Pat?
Here.
Gar?
Here.
John?
Here.
Tom?
Here.
Let's please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Okay, at this time, we have public comments. Council will receive public comments on any issue related to the agenda. Limited discussion by the council may take place. Larry?
Hello,
Hi.
Lawrence M. I live on Locust Street, next to my older person, Tom. I'm looking at Resolution 3222, 4.5% simplified rate increase for the water utility. Does that just apply to the clean water or to the wastewater processing as well?
That would apply only to the water that you're purchasing going out of your tap. So not the wastewater that's going out of your home.
Okay,
Although the billing is such that all of the bill comes at once, so it's not as if it's broken up on your bill. That kind of breakdown of what, but the actual increase is shown in the memo of what would all be applied for that increase.
and can anybody tell me how 4.5% was arrived at?
That is the Public Service Commission. They have a formula that they use to create what percentage a simplified rate increase can be done each year. How exactly that 4.5 is determined, but it's different every year.
Very good, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comments? If not, we'll move on to the next item. There's a consent agenda. City Council workshop minutes from September 21st. City Council regular minutes from September 26th. Personnel Committee minutes from October 3rd. Finance Committee minutes from October 5th. Cash balances from September. General fund balance comparison. September 22 paid invoice report. Maureen?
Motion to, oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I can wait for the motion.
Okay, I'll motion the items 1 through 7 on the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I just have a question about on page 4 of the paid invoice report. I'm curious about why the city and City Hall and the library are so much above the cost for the other buildings. And I'm just curious about why that is. Is that because we distribute them differently for the natural gas?
So I'm trying to figure out what you're looking at.
The natural gas, where we're at 176, and everybody else is at.
One more page.
They just look so
They are.
extremely different. Even the firehouse is more than double one of the other buildings.
That's because of that boiler system. We have a boiler system in here. That great big piece of equipment.
Oh, is that the
Yeah.
difference?
And actually, you'll see it's divided amongst cable, court, the library, and us, so it's divided 4 ways.
Oh, I see.
So
Yes, so
it's-
there are more entities in this building sharing those costs.
Yeah, but it's 5% for cable, 5% for court, 45 for City Hall, and 45 for the library.
Yeah. Okay, that
But
helps.
that
Thanks,
system-
Jane.
That system costs us money.
Any other discussion on the motion?
That's probably been there months. I just noticed it this week.
Okay, thank you. If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Next item on the agenda is reports of standing committee. Finance Committee Resolution 32-22 to proceed with a 4.5% simplified rate increase for the water utility.
Thank you, Mayor. So we discussed this briefly, or as part of our budget meeting with the Finance Committee. Currently, right now, the water fund is sitting in a net position of $3,277. However, we do have two projects coming online. One is the well 3 remediation that we're working on due to the high nitrate since it is currently turned off. Currently, that project is expected to cost about $1.7 million, although we are buying down using our ARPA funds to lower that cost by about $400,000. And then additionally, we have the Locust Street and then Elm Washington Street reconstruction projects that we're working on. And the portion of the water funds to come out of those projects is $1.29 million. The city currently, we have enough debt service to cover about $88,000 or a little under $88,000 out of our water fund. If both projects are to move forward, estimating high, but we'll probably have to cover about $250,000 around there in debt to cover both projects moving forward. So we are looking at opportunities that we can start to potentially step increase our water fund to start taking on that debt. As we already discussed, the state of Wisconsin is governed by the Public Service Commission. They're the ones who direct what rates can be applied to water systems across the state of Wisconsin. So as in looking at that, currently this year the simplified rate increase that is allowed for the state or the Public Service Commission is 4.5%. So per quarter, that would be about an increase of $2.39, or for the year, $9.56. With this increase, it is estimated that we would generate about an extra $26,200 in additional water fund revenue for that account. So with that, we're bringing it to council to consider and then give us a resolution to proceed with that simplified rate increase.
Okay. Any questions on the resolution?
Just the idea that, so we have 88,000 in the fund right now.
$88,000 available to cover additional debt service.
Okay. And we estimate that the projects we're looking to do are going to be 250.
It's probably high, but yes, around
Okay.
there.
And this will generate 26, which is just 1/8, 1/10 of what we need. Is okay. So this is not. Well, somebody may say any raise is excessive, but it's not. It's just a tiny slice in the bucket of what we need to do what we need. With this raise, is this something that can then next year, should we find the opportunity, can be lowered back? Does the state let you do that, or is this something that can only go up?
This can only go up.
That's what I was.
If you want to do a full rate study, which is something that we're going to discuss with the Public Works Committee at their next meeting, part of that is looking at your eligible expense, and as part of a real full rate increase, or full rate study, I should say, they can come back and show that you need to decrease your rates, and then at that point in time, they would, whatever the Public Service Commission essentially is what goes. You can contest it, but generally speaking, those aren't in favor of the municipal water suppliers.
Do you have any opinion on where our, I'm going to say pennies or dollars per gallon rate compares to those around us?
I don't.
We're low. Yeah, we're low compared to other communities.
We haven't done a rate study in a really long time, and I think that when you see that, and then you compare other municipalities, you fall very low, and that's the indication that you need to do that rate study.
You're behind the curve.
And it takes what happens is you end up having to increase rates significantly and do
Because
it.
the rate study
You still can
requires
do
you
it in
to do-
steps, but it's still, you don't want to wait too long to do a study because you need to keep up with,
Right. You fall behind.
yeah.
Is there a reason why this would have to be done tonight, or could it be put with the budget approval process in November? so that the general public has a chance to react and come here and voice their opinions.
So we have 45 days to the date of implementation, which would be January 1st, so that would put us, can't remember the date exactly, November 17th? November 17th. So the budget approval would be the second meeting in November, so this would have to be done prior to that. So what you're doing tonight is simply giving us the opportunity to move forward with it. We'd still have to do a customer notice in the paper, and then additionally, we'd post it on our website. So there'd still be opportunities for citizens to voice their concerns if they wanted to step forward and do that.
So, okay, the citizens, a group of people voice their concerns following tonight. What happens then? Is there an opportunity to rescind any permission you'd be getting tonight?
Well, I think if we had enough of people come forward, I guess one of the things that we're kind of asking council to consider is based on the cash flow that we're currently seeing for debt services. I think if we don't want to move forward with the 4.5% increase, the next step should be, let's have a discussion about not moving forward with Locust and Elm, because we don't have the option of not moving forward with the well 3 remediation. That's something I know we're all wanting to move forward with, but if we don't want to look at other options, or we could say we don't want to do the simplified rate increase, we'd rather look to see what a full study increase would do, and then at that point, the process would be, Ellers would do a cash flow analysis on our water utility, and they would give us a pretty good estimation then of what we would have to do, or what we'd probably be submitting to the Public Service Commission to see that increase, how much it would be. And at that time, if council doesn't like the number, we could not move forward with that as well. So those are kind of the options, I guess. But to answer your question directly, there's a limited amount of time that we have to do this for 2023, and that's kind of one of the things as part of our discussion about trying to step this. That was one of the options that Ellers put forward, was do the simplified rate increase this year. So it gets you a little bit further ahead in trying to look at some of your costs for future years, instead of doing a much larger full rate study. If that makes sense.
I have two other questions that I'm beginning, after we went through this the other night, but I still need a little bit more clarity. There's a big spread between the $2 and the $9 impact that you're estimating. Can you explain to me what that difference might be, or what explains that?
The $2.39 is just a per quarter increase, so if you times that by 4, you get your $9.56.
Oh, I see. Okay. I thought it was different entities might be charged at the 9%. And the other thing, then the $136,000 that we still need, that would be covered somehow in 2023 rather than this year, if we have, after we do a rate increase study?
So if we move forward, there's basically phases of the full rate increase. The first phase would be, Ellers, our financial advisor, would be doing a cash flow analysis, and as part of that, they take all of our future expenses that we're looking at, build that into a model, and then they kind of tell us what we need to see per year to cover those expenses.
Oh.
And then that would give us a very good estimate of, if we were to submit to the Public Service Commission, how much of an increase it would actually
That's
be.
right. Okay, I remember that now.
The key is once you submit to the public service increase, you're pretty much locking yourself in with whatever the recommendation is.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to go with what they say.
Yeah.
Okay, so is it an option, and I think this is kind of going down the line where Tom was, is it an option to, I know with some things we can do a first reading and a second reading and so forth. Is it an option to make this part of the, I mean, it's already part of the agenda, but share this out to folks, that what we're looking to do here is, yes, fund the Elm Street and other things, and we have a shortfall and we need to do that. And share out why, I guess, a little bit more, one more time, with the hopes that some people will see it and understand. And then we have the next meeting this month to do the action or whatever, because I think you said we have to get it done by the first meeting in November to be able to make it to January, is that right?
Correct.
Thoughts on, I guess, for everybody, thoughts on that?
So you're just advocating kicking the can down the road 2 weeks?
And trying, and trying to get it shared out to the community a little bit more, rather than just getting it done here, and like you said, then what do we gotta do if we get, some noise? And we may get nothing, nobody may
But
notice it, may.
what if you get noise, Pat? What are you gonna do?
You know what, all we're gonna do then is give them the opportunity to come in and
Okay, okay.
And I'm in
Do
favor of
that.
that, because I think a few times we have skipped the first and the second reading on things, and not everybody gets everything the first time it comes through. I certainly don't.
That's ordinance. That's an ordinance reading.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so for resolution.
Yeah, and it's probably still gonna get done, and everything along those lines, but getting it out there and sharing it a little bit more, I think is not a bad idea, and that's my own thought.
How would it get out there?
It's gonna go in the paper, hopefully in the notes of this meeting's agenda one more time, and we're gonna talk about it one more time in the next meeting. You're right, that's it, but we are raising people's rates, and I think everything we can do to share that as best we can, rather than just doing it, is my thought on that.
Okay, we have a resolution. Back to the 32-22. Do I have a motion, looking for a motion to approve Resolution 32-22?
Motion to approve or move forward with Resolution 32-22 to proceed with the 4.5% simplified rate increase for the water utility.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion on the motion?
Just to clarify, so tonight, if the resolution moves forward, we'll proceed with the customer notice, but we won't submit the application to the Public Service Commission until essentially the day before our deadline. So that would put it November 16th.
Okay.
Is that my understanding, what council's basically the discussion?
Correct.
Yeah. And we'll put out a notice on our website, and we can put something on our Facebook account.
Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you. Okay, the next item on the agenda under Finance Committee is committee report in the October 5th budget meeting. I'm not sure where to go with this, but we had a budget meeting. We heard from all the directors of all the departments. And we came to an agreement to raise the levy
9.6%.
9.3%?
9.6%.
9.6%. So, to cover all our needs and all the things that we're able to fund, we needed to do that. So that'll be covered at the second meeting in November, correct? That's when we ratify the budget?
Correct.
So is that satisfactory committee report? Any
Yes.
questions or additions?
Do you think you should clarify the 9.6 may not raise taxes? We're in our net new construction.
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but essentially for a $350,000 home, the estimate was that it would increase the city portion by $108 per year.
the city's portion, $108, and yet it could be that folks' overall rate could stay flat because the school district backed off
For this year.
for this year, exactly.
this year.
For this 1 year, yep.
Okay, any other comments?
I did not support it.
This discussion and the committee agreement does not predicate the vote that will be taking place in November.
Clarify that.
We're going to be having a vote whether to accept the budget in November. The preliminary agreement of the committee in session does not predicate the vote at that time. I feel that it's pretty important to get things out to the public so the public can respond in a timely manner before we make decisions about reaching into their pockets.
Could we add that to the water one that we're gonna post?
You want a separate post on that one?
Might as well do both in the same one.
Okay.
That was kind of my point earlier when we were discussing the water increase.
We already voted on the water one, though.
Yep, it's over now.
Is that correct?
So, yes, we.
So we voted and it passed, so no,
Yep.
we can't add that to it.
Well, he was saying, could we add that to a post?
Just a
on Facebook?
website post.
Yeah, a website post.
Oh,
Just to say like, hey, this was approved and blah, 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 this one is upcoming for approval in November.
yeah, okay, I see what you mean.
Yeah, yeah, just so we don't do two separate posts when they're kind of, we're increasing, so. Same topic.
Okay, so the next item is Public Works. Next meeting is Monday, October 24th at 5. Planning Commission, next meeting Monday, November 7th at 6. Parks and Public Property meeting, Monday, October 17th at 5. Nothing for license, ordinance, health and safety. Personnel Committee meeting Wednesday, November 2nd at 5. So the next item on the agenda is communications and new business. This time, we'll entertain any public comments on any issue not related to the agenda. Limited discussion by council may take place. However, no action will be taken on any items. Is there any public comments?
I'm just going to remind again, the election will be held at the old Pataxi Event Center. We are getting a lot of absentees, so, and you can actually start to vote absentee at City Hall on October 25th. So, otherwise, right now, we have to do it through the mail.
Okay.
Just a question to that. This, I guess, would be my first time voting over there. Is there a reason we're doing it over there rather than here?
Much larger turnout.
Oh,
I already
okay.
had over 200 absentee ballots, and that's not even, that's just being mailed out. So once we start to do it inside, we'll really get a feeling.
Based on the volume you perceive,
Yeah.
the space that you need.
Right.
Okay.
Especially still with the COVID stuff.
Well,
That's the last
hey,
one.
if you
Last
think
one, we
we're
had a
getting
couple
great
of,
turnout, that's awesome.
yeah, we had a couple of election workers that kind of had COVID, so. So we're
Recently
spreading-
or at the,
After the last election.
Uh-huh.
So we're gonna spread out more.
yeah.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is code enforcement procedures, review and discussion. Matt, you want to take that, or are you going to give it to Carter?
I'll take the beginning and then I'll turn it over to Carter. So at our April 11th ordinance committee meeting, we discussed the establishment of code enforcement procedures, basically just as our city planner. One of the things we hired in May, one of their duties was to take on code enforcement violation and their resolution. So we just went over procedures generally to verify with ordinance committee. There was no issues there, as that was the purview in terms of our city code. So with that, we reviewed those, and we wanted to take the opportunity to review what our procedures are again with council. So I'm going to turn it over to Carter, who is our planner, to go over the procedures and the review of those.
So yeah, I created a flow chart of our process because I think that's the most confusing part of it. It's kind of lengthy. So I'll just start at the top. It's in your packet and you guys can follow along. So when we get notified of a code violation, I'll go out to the site myself and verify if it exists. And if it does, I'll send out a letter of the violation. From there, 30 days will pass, and that's their time frame to come into compliance. After those 30 days pass, I'll revisit the site and check to see if the violation is still present. If it is, we'll issue a citation, and if it's not, the violation will be resolved, and that's kind of the best case scenario because compliance comes easy and no hassle. The citation, I'll coordinate with Eric with that to issue that. And then on the citation, it'll say a court date for them to appear at. If they do appear at the court date, they'll have a chance to plead guilty, not guilty, or no contest. If they plead not guilty, then the court process begins. If they are found guilty, it's the same as them not appearing at the court date, and we'll go to file a letter of remedial action, and then they'll have a 10-day time frame to respond to that if they want a public hearing at the Planning Commission. If they do, the Planning Commission will approve or deny our remedial action. If they deny it, and then we'll have to kind of work with the property owner to get things resolved between us. If they approve the remedial action, then we will perform the remedial action. The only time we've had to go through the full process was 244 Elm Street. So you can see on the side there, on May 19th, we were notified of the code violation. Then at the end of May, on the 31st, we sent out the letter of the violation. Then the 30 days passed, 30 days or so passed, and on July 5th, we issued the citation with the police department. Then the court date was set, so August 23rd. He did not appear at his court date, and he pled no contest and paid the citation. So then September 2nd, we sent out the remedial action letter, no response. So then on the 20th of September, we performed the remedial action, which was the form of towing the vehicles. So that's kind of our process we follow. I kind of wrote out in our guidelines if you want to read it too. Yeah.
So I'll just say, first, throughout this whole process, we try to work with the property owner. We don't, code enforcement isn't a fun process for anyone involved, for the city or for Carter, and I have to say Carter has done an absolute job. I don't know if you've seen the opportunity to see the link that we use internally for tracking code enforcement issues. But we try to work with property owners all the way along the route. If they call us or we call them, we try to work with them to come to a resolution. Unfortunately, some people don't want to work with us, or they ignore the letter and other things. So unfortunately, we continue down the process. But at any time, we've had it where they'll reach out to us, and if they ask for more time, we give them more time. We've had it where we issued a citation, and then they called us and said, can I take care of this? And we said, once you take care of this, call us and we'll work with the court to have the citation waived. So we're not trying to get through this process, or essentially we want to see ordinances and the violations resolved so we don't have to go through the process. So with that, I'll turn it over to council for questions and comments.
For some of the data that you're collecting, which I think that's awesome that you set all that up. I think that's great. So are we capturing categories of who filed, if it's resident, staff, or anything like that?
Typically, well, the bulk of the ones we have, sent letters to is kind of a laundry list from one resident. So I would say it's probably 85% resident complaints, and then the other 15% could be staff or Eric maybe, or whoever it is.
I think that'd be a nice metric to maybe just capture just for future.
Yeah, that would be helpful.
I have a question. On your enforcement guidelines, down under the compliance section, you say violations that are quickly and easily remedied are required to comply within 10 days. I only heard 30 out of, in your explanation.
Yeah, so there's kind of an exception, so I would say the length of lawn and grass is one of them where that's a less than 10 days. We don't really, we wouldn't require 30 days because, 30 days is kind of a lengthy time frame to keep your lawn not mowed. So that's one of them where in our code it actually outlines 7 days. But I think we've been following 10 days pretty solidly.
Okay. And then on the fourth point there, if compliance is not achieved within the required time frame, an administrative citation may be issued.
Yeah, so that's another thing where we've had people reach out to us and we require a written schedule of compliance. So say they can't, come into compliance within the 30 days. I think I have one on Court Street where her husband passed away and she's sorting through her stuff or his stuff, and she said she's just not going to be able to do it all within 30 days. So we worked with her and she said, we'll touch base the end of October again and see where we're at. I required that she, puts tarps over the stuff she has in the driveway while she's not working at it. So we work with people if they can't reach the 30 days. We're pretty flexible on that if they put in writing a compliance schedule.
I have a question. If it does go through the whole process and the remedial action is taken by the city, is the city billing then the violator
Yep, yeah.
for that
so
remedial action?
I'm not, firm on the process of how the billing gets around, but it eventually ends up on the property taxes one way or another.
I think they're invoiced for that for a year,
Yeah.
and then it eventually goes to
Right,
taxes.
so we just sent out the final invoices for anybody that we had gotten bills on that says that you have to have it paid by November 1st. Otherwise, 10% is added and it'll be rolled to the real estate taxes. And so they're invoiced on a monthly basis.
And to clarify, let's say in a couple of these examples, if you towed a vehicle, that means that we're going to bill them for the cost of the towing
Correct.
to do that. Or if you had to, let's say as an example, get somebody to mow somebody's yard, you bill them for the cost of the yard mowing.
Yep.
Okay. On top of the cost of the ticket.
Yes.
Okay.
I have another question just regarding this process. And, we're a small town. We've tried to, talk to each other before some of this stuff is done. And I understand the need to send out compliance letters and so on and so forth. But I just would hope that there's some way that we could have a discussion or maybe a pre-letter or something like that that could be more friendly. But I understand, but meanwhile, once the letter is sent out, we've got to have people with soft skills sitting at that window that can work out conflict resolution in a certain way. Because, and I'm not saying that we're not doing that. I understand how touchy this is. And then another thing I believe is there's issues that should be front burner and there's issues that should be back burner. And I'm just hoping that we have the wisdom to understand that within the city.
Right. To add on to Tom's point, a front burner and a back burner can be a very tricky situation because deciding what's a front burner and what's a back burner may be opening up us to a favoritism idea of some sort. And I fully get or see the liability in doing such a thing. in listening to what Carter has said and Jane chiming in on it, the idea that if explaining to folks, here's the process, and if you need help, let us know. And getting the folks, you can't make everybody get involved in the process. But if they will get involved in the process, it sounds like you're very willing to work with them and be reasonable to that line. But if you get somebody who just stonewalls you, forget it, there's nothing you can do.
Well, and I think too, Pat, it's, the thing about code enforcement is it's in front and back burners, there's so many gray areas.
Yeah, that's
And one of the
tricky.
things that, as being chair of the ordinance committee is that I have a frustration as to what's going on in our industrial park in particular, but just a lot of inconsistencies. And I think what we'd like to strive to do is just have it more consistent, and we've got some cleanup to do, unfortunately. So I think it's gonna take time, it's gonna take patience, it's gonna take working together, communicating to each other, positively listening to each other, and trying to work to, some people aren't gonna be happy. It's just the way it is, unfortunately. I wish we could send a kinder, softer first notice. And maybe, maybe there needs to be a discussion regarding that. But I feel like even if you send that first notice, you can still have discussions to try to have a resolution that is consistent with the enforcement that's happening within all of the city. That's would be a likely outcome, maybe not today, but hopefully, and especially having Carter here too, we've only been complaint-driven in regards to enforcement, and because there's just one of Carter, we probably will have to continue to do that. But we have a lot of work to do too, with certain commercial properties, certain residential properties, and, we're just asking people to do what others are doing around them in regards to compliance with our city codes.
I think
It's not a fun thing.
No.
just in the process, the only thing I have for feedback really is if we have like a contesting, maybe that's before we do like the 30-day notice or something like that. At what point do we escalate like a different route? Like where we have to have like a legal review or something like that. I mean, this is more like my world, but that's the only thing I want to bring up is like maybe in the process, like if there's something there that basically triggers the next conversation, be like, okay, they're contesting saying X, Y, Z, and then at what point do we say, okay, then we just go straight to legal review so we don't have extra paperwork in the end. That's the only thing I'm wanting to bring up in the process.
After the first notice, you mean?
No, like if there's a conversation and contesting, and then there's maybe let's just say a disagreement on what is actually applying and what's not, and that maybe there's different interpretations, at what point do we say, okay, hold on, we are gonna escalate and just take this information back, we're gonna do this
For
with it.
review to legal.
Exactly, before it ends up into circuit court. That's just the one thing I just wanted to bring up is
You
just
mean
adding
if
into
the
the
ordinance
process.
isn't clear?
If there is if the situation maybe isn't clear, but the ordinance, so like how to interpret basically a situation where it could go one way or another. Or ordinances are,
I'd hate to have
you know what I'm saying?
ordinances like that. There are.
I know.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
I think we've cleaned up a lot of that.
yeah. That's just one thing I just want to bring up, like if that could be worked into the process, that's it.
And we do generally throughout the timeline, have conversations with our city attorney about ordinances and the citations that are written, just to verify. I know Carter has communicated extensively on some of the issues, making sure that, we're having conversations with what we're doing, because we don't want to write a citation that we end up
Exactly.
doing improperly or
Yep.
not the right method.
Okay, yeah.
You mentioned that about 85% of these, if I understood you, seem to be resident-driven, and maybe by a particular small percentage of people. How much, if any, time are you currently able, or are you doing to be out actively checking, or are we right now all reactionary as
It's all
opposed to?
complaint
It's all
based as stated.
complaint-based, yeah.
So is there, and just asking, is there a plan at any point where we would actually be out actively looking or patrolling or whatever for this?
I think that would probably, would that go to ordinance? Because right now that, we don't have a resource for that.
Okay. Like I said, I was just curious about that. That just popped into my head when she mentioned something about that, and you did too. And I was like, oh, do you actually go out and look for this? No, it's because I know you're pretty busy.
Yeah, I the only time I go out, maybe I'll see things here or there. Like, I've seen, to bring up a specific one, a business where there are vehicles parked in the vision triangle, and while I'm driving, I can't see what's coming. So that's one that I've got to, investigate myself. So I'd say there's probably maybe one or two that I've seen that I've pursued for
Majority of it
myself.
is community.
Yep. Yeah.
driven.
Complaint based. Yeah.
Okay. Again, that's a great flow chart, and I think if we could put that flow chart in the paper or on our, whatever else, share it out there so that folks know this is how it works. Whatever we can do to communicate or share that, I think is great.
Can you remind me who developed this flow chart, and was this approved by the ordinance committee? Did that go through the ordinance committee too?
I think, we developed it last week, and no,
flow
it did
chart?
not. Yeah.
Oh.
But it comes from
Okay.
the ordinance guidelines.
Okay. So I heard, it sounds like 2 members of the ordinance committee believe there's maybe a gap between city being notified of the code violation and the violation letter being sent, where there should be maybe another step, possibly a conversation or a nicer worded letter. It just, 2 of the 3 members of the ordinance committee have now voiced that. But there's maybe a different step. So I'm not saying that,
Well,
I'm not saying I agree or disagree with that. I'm just
No, but I
saying-
mean, didn't we in years past put door hangers on people's doors in regards to stating, these violations are occurring, please call us?
Yeah, we did that, and then they got one notice for mowing their lawn, and generally it said that you're responsible to mow your lawn, and this will be your only
And that was the
notice.
door hanger. Did they receive a letter as well as the door hanger?
They received a letter if the violation continued.
The biggest thing that we want to make sure we stay away from when talking with our city attorney is entering people's property.
Yeah, and that
Yeah.
was where we.
That's where we ran
had-
into trouble
That's where we
before.
ran into trouble
issues.
before, right?
I think we have ordinances, and if we don't like the ordinance, or if we want to soften the ordinance, we should do that, rather than putting all kinds of gray areas into either the process or into the process. It just makes it harder for Carter, or the person that has to attend to the violation, to muck it up a lot. I think.
I 100% agree.
Agreed.
And I think this process, to me, looks very reasonable and fair.
I agree. I liken this to a human resources situation, and the more steps you add to it, the more trouble you set yourself up for.
Right.
And the more black and white it is, the better it is. And if somebody doesn't, again, you've given them the opportunity, like you said, if folks will reach out to you throughout the process, once it's initiated.
Yeah.
The opportunity is there, if they'll communicate and work with you.
Could this be posted to the website?
Yes.
Okay, very good communication there. Okay, the next item on the agenda is council committee review. If you take a look at it, it's in your packet or on your computer. We have 7 committees currently, and they're recommending that we drop down to 4. Matt, would you like to take that?
Sure. So we had this as part of our workshop, unfortunately, we went a little long in our workshop, so we decided to move this to regular council. Currently, within the ordinance 120-6, we have 7 committees, as described in that memo, on page 25, I believe, of your packet. So one of the things we wanted to discuss was some of the committees, either by Wisconsin state statute or duplicated purposes, kind of are redundant. So wanted to have a conversation, potentially reducing them down to 4 committees. The idea is we keep finance committee because it essentially meets once or maybe twice a year if we have major finance discussions with the budget and things like that. Parks and public property would be combined with public works, since that all falls under one department, so they meet on that 3rd Monday of each month, so they'd still have their own separate Monday meeting. They will definitely get larger agenda items, but it would also give the opportunity for public works items to be discussed once a month as well. Health and safety it's currently health committee, but if you change to health and safety committee, this would be more like, for instance, goats. We've had a talk about goats would go there. So things like code enforcement issues could go there. Although generally speaking, the ordinance, the idea behind removing the ordinance committee is that if you have an ordinance issue, you bring it to the committee that's as part of that ordinance. So for instance, goats would go to health and safety. If we had something with zoning, like used vehicles or abandoned vehicles, that would go to plan commission and a discussion, and so on and so forth. And then keeping personnel committee again. So that would be the 4 committees. We would remove license committee because again, that is something that is dictated by Wisconsin state statute, so it has to come to council for review and consideration. It doesn't have the option to not go further. So with that, those are the 4 committees that are being suggested. However, it's up to council for their discussion and what they would like to see.
Amazing
ultimately.
idea.
I think it's a good idea.
I love it.
So then the health and safety is going to be ordinance as well.
No.
Ordinance will, depending on what the situation is, ordinance will fall under the committee that it might be if it were, it could, depending on the ordinance, it'll go to the committee that ordinance applies to.
But
Correct.
there's only 2 that would fall under.
Planning, parks, and health and safety. So if it's cars and stuff, it'll go to planning.
So I mean, if we come up with a new ordinance, where does that fall under? If it doesn't have anything to do with health and safety, say it has to do with police or fire and EMS or something like that,
Well, that-
where would that fall under?
Health and safety.
So if
Health and
If it was
safety.
police and fire EMS, we'd send it health and safety, but say if it was a zoning change where we wanted to start implementing a solar ordinance, like solar panel, that would go to zoning or plan commission and then come to council.
Don't get Maureen too excited.
Yeah,
about
don't
solar
mention
panels.
that.
I never thought about that.
I was thinking the same.
It'll just be free.
That's right.
Okay, then, one other issue I have is combining the parks and public works. Now, I know they both, go to the same department. However, that could make their agenda very, 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 very long in the future. And the idea of having an hour-long meeting might fly out the window. So if you have a parks issue and you have a public works issue, and it's gonna go on and on and on, are you gonna be open to 2 meetings a month? Or
mean,
3
sure.
meetings a month so you can
It's-
cover everything?
It's still gonna be better than how many meetings I have to go to now.
Right, I mean,
You have to go two.
the idea is that we might have one meeting that would last an hour and a half or 2 hours rather than, is that?
Sometimes I already do that.
Yeah.
That was my only concern
then-
as well, having been on both of those committees, is that they have the longest agendas.
And
Well,
it's-
Bailey and I are on
yeah.
both of those
I have
committees,
no-
so.
I have no
it's just-
issue.
it's-
Bring it
it's
on.
reducing our number of meetings.
I have
I'm
no
on
issue.
one, and I think we're,
Because we really have not had that many public works
Public works has
meetings.
not been
We do
very
have the road
lengthy.
projects coming up this next year, but I
Yeah.
really don't think that it's going to get unmanageable in terms of time.
Well, we
You
can
know,
try it.
I-
We can always decide we don't like it.
And if we need an additional meeting to separate it out 1 month, we do an additional meeting. It
There you
still
go.
cuts down on the amount of meetings that we have to have.
Well, and I think too, what really helps is looking over the meeting packets ahead of time and emailing questions ahead of time so that everybody's real clear on what's in that packet.
And usually we're so heavily involved just because we're meeting so regularly and talking with staff, that's where it's like, I usually know what's,
So then the chair, I would suggest the chair of the committee needs to review the agenda ahead of time to see, is this doable in a reasonable amount of time, or do we need to schedule another meeting at that time? Don't try to fit it in and in the middle of your meeting, go, oh, we're gonna have to adjourn this and pick it up again.
I usually chat with Matt before meetings, at least for parks, and see what's gonna be on it, and if there's not a
Just
lot,
saying.
it'll fill. I mean,
Just making sure that's gonna happen.
Who's Public Works? Is that
that's
John?
like
John?
basic
Yeah.
management.
I have one concern. That's more or less unintended consequences in the future. A future mayor could pack all three of these committees with sycophants. And
With what?
people that agree with him no matter what.
Oh, okay.
And that could disrupt the democratic process. And things could happen so fast that the public doesn't have a chance to react, and things are done.
But it'll still come to council.
Yeah,
And council is where, I mean, even if we say we want to do something on Parks, Public Works, it still has to come here for approval. And Public Works is so dang expensive, anytime we touch anything, it's got to have like usually a roll call for half of it.
yep.
So I
But
don't
that's
see
my
it, I
concern.
don't see
My
it.
concern is
Yep.
that the
Legitimate.
democratic process could be constricted in this
Well, then should
streamlining
John and I sit
process.
on the same committees together? I mean, because if we're talking about, I mean, if that's essentially what we're getting at, right? Like, if it's disrupting the democratic process, I mean, I think.
Well, he's just saying
I don't-
consolidation of power, I
But
think is what he's saying.
It's still,
Essentially.
it's still three. So that's where I'm
Well,
not
he
understanding.
could have the
this.
three same people on all three
Well,
committees.
let's say we combine the Public Works and the Parks and Public Property and make it 4 of us.
There you go.
You gotta have an odd number.
Five,
Okay,
3.
3 is good.
Am I
mean-
correct on that? You need
No,
a.
I'm not
So
talking
you don't
about
have a
now, I'm talking about
typo?
sometime
Sure.
in the
No,
future, a hypothetical thing,
Three.
but
It's valid, it's a valid.
that's
point.
unintended consequences, and they happen all
If
the
we combine
time.
them, we'll have to have a quorum of 4.
If you have more than 3 people, it's a quorum of the council, so you're essentially making votes that are outside of council purview, so it can't be more than 3 people.
So you guys all good with that?
I'm completely fine with
Well,
it.
let's try it for a period of time and see, and see how it works.
It'll certainly outlast me.
We got another year.
I guess, if
Your clock is ticking,
If the-
isn't it? You
well-
actually have an expiration date.
the mayor.
Well,
has
I
these
have
sycophants,
been,
then-
I have been redistricted out of my
You actually have an
position here,
expiration date.
so,
I'm
I'm
not
done.
planning to stay forever.
no, I'm not saying anything
Who is?
happened there, but, so, okay.
Okay, so we're all good with this for now? If it doesn't work, we'll take it back to the woodshed.
Yeah.
Do we?
Do you need a vote on it?
Yeah, Are we
This is just a
gonna
review.
make it immediate?
So we would have the ordinance brought for essentially like we do all the ordinance, first, second, and third reading for consideration before, and then the mayor would have to come forward with his recommendations for who sits on the following, the committees.
The other one we're missing is.
Would that wait until
Border review.
April when we always do it, or would that be immediate?
It would be as part of approval, you'd come forward with your recommendations, so if it was approved, those, a resolution.
So the only one that's missing that's on here is border review.
Or
Well,
would we
that's-
all have
that's
to
an
take a
appointed
turn
one.
at that one?
Well, I'm just.
I already got
really wants to get rid of that board.
I already got your name
She's
on it.
already.
know.
feels
I
her
will
turn.
forever remind you that is one that next year I will
She
not
took
be
the other
on.
2 years ahead of us.
Well, you gotta get her a board review hat.
It's like my,
The not
I think
put on.
Pat wants
So do we
to,
need a vote on that, or just the council?
I just want to know if I can.
Just your input, and then we will bring it forward in the next council
Yeah.
meeting for an actual vote
Okay.
with the ordinance change.
So let's do that.
no. I don't
Okay,
think it's a
the next item on the agenda is closed session.
yes.
Closed session per Wisconsin State Statute 19.85, considering employment, promotion, compensation, performance valuation of any public employee over which the government body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility.
Motion to go into closed session?
Second that.
All those in favor say aye, or all I
Aye.
have to do roll call. Bailey?
Aye.
Maureen?
Aye.
Pat?
All right.
Dar?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Tom?
Aye.
Okay, we are in closed session.